Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rounding the Bases presented by Community America Credit Union. My name is Joel Goldberg, and it is great to have you here. Love, as always, the partnership with Community America Credit Union, as well as my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. If you're looking to hire, if you're looking to be hired, if you're looking for a resource, check them out. You don't have to be in Kansas City either. chiefofstaffkc.com. Chief of Staff Kansas City, making connections that matter. I've got a great connection today. I'm joined by a former college football star who heeded his coach's advice to find an unexpected calling. His name is Larry Lewis Jr., the esteemed executive director of Growing Futures Early Childhood Education Center, who sidelined his pro ball dreams for the one that's more impactful than any playbook could have anticipated. I love this journey. As a tireless advocate for children in need, he has dedicated a career to investing in their future. And by nurturing growth, strengthening families, and enriching communities, he ensures that every child, no matter their background, gets the head start they deserve. It's been fun for me to get to know my guest today, Larry, and we've done coffee a couple of times, and might be some pickleball in the future if I can keep up with him, because he might go pro sometime soon. We'll get to that later.
We will.
Larry, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joe. It's good to be on here with you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to get out here. And I loved your theme music, man. The beat was rocking.
A.Y. Young, Kansas Cityan, who has been traveling the world for some United Nations type of stuff, and a guest on this program a bunch of years ago. And I can't give up the theme song. Although sometimes it ends up in people's heads a little too long. I don't know if we should blame him or blame me. But anyway, I'll tell you, it's been great to get to know you. I think I told you this when we connected and we were connected. We went for coffee, and immediately I said, "Wait, we didn't have enough time. We got to do this again." Yeah, and so we did this again, and here we are in the middle of summer in Kansas City. I want to talk to you first about your background. And if there was anything as you were growing up and then into sports at a very high level, if you envisioned anything like this taking place.
Oh, wow. Where I am, if I reflect back on who I was as a kid, absolutely. Everybody probably saw it coming. So, Joe, in my community, wherever we lived at the time, I was always the kid that got everybody together, right? Whether it was good or bad, whether we were going to play basketball, football, or break out a window, I was the one that was getting everybody together. So I was always that connector for whatever the idea might have been. And so knowing that now about who I was, you could say that this was definitely down the route that I was going, down the path of being a person of community, bringing people together for the right causes. Obviously, back then, some of them weren't the right causes, but I was a kid. I was learning, right? And so, it definitely was my path. It was part of the journey that was meant for me. And I am a lifelong youth development professional. So wherever I land, it'll always be focused around communities, children, and families, and being that advocate for them and providing those, especially that need us the most, with an opportunity.
I think it's pretty cool because I think you're probably working with some kids, not all of them, but some kids that maybe want to go in the NFL one day or the NBA one day. And I mean, I've always thought, whether realistic or not, and it might be realistic for some, the numbers would suggest that for most it's not. But I've never liked telling someone to not dream about something. And so, and I say the same thing for broadcasters. And by the way, nowhere near the skill needed to be a broadcaster as you would to play in the NFL or in Major League Baseball. But the numbers are not very good. And so, I didn't need the athletic ability to do this, but somehow I made it. And if I had listened to people that said, nah, that's an impossible field to get into, I may never have done it. With that said, a lot of these kids could be the next Larry Lewis Jr., and they could go on and play college football. Maybe they do have NFL aspirations, but then again, there might be something else out there or something more. And I'm curious sort of how you how you view that one and balance it in terms of shooting for the moon, shooting for the stars, but also understanding that there are a lot of possibilities.
Absolutely, man. I tell you what, Joe. So my goal was always to go to the league, right? We didn't call it the NFL. Everybody called it the league. We're trying to get to the league. And, you start to go down your path, and all of our paths are very different. But every last one of us believes we're going to the league. And so it is very eye-opening when that doesn't happen for you. And many of us had no other plan. There was no what's next because it was always the league. And so for me, I always had the dream of being in the NFL. That was my dream. But my passion had always been for families and community and making that happen. And so when the what's next came my way, I knew what was next for me, but I needed some guidance and some direction around that. And so, as you know, I played for K-State during the time of what is a living legend now in Bill Snyder. And we were always paying attention to him and looking at him as the opportunity to get to that next spot, or in the way of us getting to that next spot. And so while you're in it, you don't see what's really happening in that moment. And I tell people to this day, Coach Snyder was never preparing any of us to go to the NFL. That was not his goal. What his ultimate goal was to prepare young men to go into whatever community they were going to land on and be productive, responsible citizens of that community. And it took years beyond to realize, holy smoke, that's what he was doing. That's what he was doing. The being on time, the being prepared, being professional, and doing all of those things. That's the skill sets that he was giving to us. It was never about getting to the NFL. While it was great, some of us have gotten there and some of us will get there. The goal was for us to be productive citizens in the community we landed in. And that's exactly what happened for me. And so when I know that many children will go down that path and that story, my focus for all of them is make sure you have a what's next. Because while you might be a part of that 1% or that 0.001%, you don't know what the next day holds for you. It could be the ACL, the Achilles, and now you get down to what's next.
Yeah, I mean, it could end tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And that could be true. You never know how these visions or these dreams, this path is going to go.
Right.
I'll sidebar a little bit. This is a very unique and rare story, and they don't usually work out this way. But I was just interviewing the other night, the Kansas City Royals signed their first round draft pick. They drafted him 6th overall. He might have been the most well-known player in the draft and could have easily gone in one of the top few picks too. The reason why he was so well known was he was the Shohei Ohtani of college baseball. He was pitching at 95 miles an hour and he was hitting 500 feet home runs. And that's a whole different story. Who knows, if there's going to be more of that. It's an incredibly impossible thing to do. It's like, when we were all growing up, like, who's the next Bo Jackson? There might not be another one. There might not be another Shohei Ohtani.
There's not going to be another Bo.
My only point to it is that this guy was about to be drafted out of high school as a left-handed pitcher throwing, mid to upper 90s. And he messed up his elbow and needed Tommy John surgery. And so suddenly nobody wanted to draft him. He signed at the University of Florida, and they said, "Hey, while you're rehabbing, you want to try some hitting? And I mean, we know that you can hit. You want to just be a designated hitter." And he goes on to be the best power hitting first baseman in the country by his junior year, and now he's doing both. So, point to that is it doesn't usually work out that way, but you never know what interesting paths. I said to him the other night, his name is Jack Caglione. I said to him live in the interview, how much did your life change? And he said, this would never have been happening right now if not for that. And so it's hard to understand that when you are 8, 10, 12, 14 years old. You didn't understand it at that age.
Not
the
at all.
Kids that you're getting at a young age, I mean, how do you explain that to them when they're not going to grasp that? Is it just as simple as showing them other things, opening up other doors and exposing them?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And so, with the age range I'm working with, I'm focused on that early education age range. So it's 0 to 5. And so their dreams are very big and we just talk about the importance of what's happening with them right in this moment. And we really focus with the parents and educating and empowering them on giving them the tools that provide them with those opportunities, meeting those developmental milestones, making sure that their gross motor muscles are moving, their fine motor, their cognitive development, their social emotional level. If we can get all of those things in place for a child and then a family, when they get to those opportunities, they're more equipped to then be ready to deal with those. But one of the biggest things for me, Joe, was this particular community did so much for me growing up. The story is very long and vast, but in the short time that I was here, it showed me what life could be outside of a child that grew up in outright poverty. And so I now have the opportunity to work with those same children that have come after me to then be able to give them that foundation that they deserve to have, but also see someone that looks like them that also wanted to play in the NFL. And Mr. Larry didn't make it, but I still see the success of someone that looks like me. And that's my ultimate goal, is to make sure that they see someone that looks like them in a space of opportunity and success. And so that's very important in my focus right now for all the children that I've worked with and that I still connect with now to this day.
Well, there's a very deep discussion there about why representation matters. And so if a large amount of the kids that you're working with are children of color, not that I couldn't be effective in that role if I had your training, but they may not be able to relate to me quite as much as they do with Mr. Larry. There's something that's very important about that. Before we dive a little bit deeper into what you're all doing at Growing Futures and incredible work within the community, let's backtrack. Let's go to the background. You talked about poverty. You talked about growing up with those football aspirations.
Yeah.
Tell me about childhood. And I know I saw that your parents worked in the restaurant business. You moved all over the place. What was childhood like? Give my listeners, YouTube viewers, a little bit of an idea of what life was like growing up.
So I tell people all the time, my parents did not know what they were doing. There wasn't, when I think about early education and all the skill sets and developmental milestones and the hot words that we use now, my parents knew none of that, Joe. They had no idea what they were doing. But the one thing that I tell people we always had was love. And then all the other things worked themselves out as we got through life. And so from Louisiana, a family definitely within poverty. We were on that spectrum of poverty, and there's a wide spectrum of that. There's broke, robbing Peter to pay Paul, all the way down through unhoused, right? And we stayed on robbing Peter to pay Paul. That was the life we grew up in. And so you learn a few things in that, right? But my parents were also fortunate to have the ability, by way of the organization they work for, Piccadilly Cafeteria, which is a cafeteria style restaurant like Luby's or Fur's, which would have been local to here. They had the opportunity to move us around from community to community to open up new restaurants. But what it did for us was it exposed us to the world. It exposed us to different ways of life, different cultures, different experiences that most children don't get. All my cousins are still in Louisiana to this day and know nothing beyond that, where we got the opportunity to be in Arizona, Texas, Miami, Florida. And we made our way to Overland Park, Kansas, right? That's what it was essentially. We were like, where's Overland Park, Kansas, right? And we ended up here in 8th grade. And
I guess there was a Piccadilly's here.
That it was built, and we came to open it. It's actually where the K Machos is now, 119th and Metcalf.
Yeah,
the K Machos was built as a Piccadilly cafeteria. And so I went from Miami, Florida in the early 90s, Joe, which at the time it was like the Great Migration, Haitians, Jamaicans, Cubans, blacks, whites, this melting pot of people in one space. No one spoke language. All the communities were separated, and there was the violence, the low education experience that we were all being provided, that then to move from that space to Overland Park, Kansas, in the mid 90s, right? I went from this melting pot of people to being one of 3 black kids in my school. 2 other guys, and I won't call by name, but they both had the same name. And when I met them, they were nothing like what I grew up with as black. And so I was like, you're not black. This isn't what black looks like to me, right? They were dressed proper and preppy and spoke proper. And I was like, this is Carlton 1 and 2. I feel like I'm in a Fresh Prince episode, man. I was freaking out. But to go from a life of flight, or freeze to a space where people were like, man, you don't have to live like that. You don't have to do that. And I'm like, wait, so you mean I get to be a kid? I have to worry about fighting every day. I get to be safe, get my education, play my sports. They're like, yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. Dude was it back then in the 90s. And I immediately embraced that. Many people can't immediately embrace it, but I did. I was like, let's go. And we began to thrive as a family in this community that every child deserves. Joe, every child deserves Johnson County. Safe, resources, education. That every child deserves that. And we had that opportunity. But again, as a family of poverty, it was quickly taken. And so before going into my junior year of high school, my parents were like, we can't afford to live here. We need to get out of here. And so we went back to what we know, back to the South where we can make it. But you know anything about the South in that time, Louisiana specifically, it was considered the murder capital of the world. Listen to the rap music back then. They bragged about what Louisiana was. And so we went from the first number 1 in education and no crime to 49th in education and number 1 in crime in a community. And it immediately took us back to that fight, flight, or freeze space. And Joe, I was there with my mom and dad and my brother and sister for maybe 3 weeks. And it was immediate that I was in the same spot I was in before, fighting every day, trying to protect myself, protecting my little brother and sister. And I went to my mom and dad, Joel, and I said, I can't be here. I need to, I'm going back to Kansas, right? And I had
that's how you said it then, huh?
Yeah, I did. We didn't know what it was. And I had the support of this community that allowed me to come back here and finish my education, get out there to Hutchinson Community College for a little while. I'm a Blue Dragon, got to play there, ended up at K-State. And it was by way of Coach Snyder that got me where I am to this very day.
So you knew enough at that point. You're what, 17, 16, 17, something like that?
years old when I left home.
I mean, you knew enough then. You were, I don't know if mature is the right word. Maybe you were, but you had enough sense in you, enough adult sense, developed sense to say, I got to go back to that because this isn't going to work for me. What was that conversation like with your family? It's not easy for parents to give up their kids, so to speak, at that age. Yet I'm sure they were feeling the same thing.
You know, it's funny because to this day, my mom still talks about that being one of the more critical moments in our family was letting me leave. Because their original conversation was, boy, you're not going anywhere. Go sit your ass down somewhere, right? Go to your room. But at this point, we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I was like, what room am I going to? You know, my sister sleeps on that side of the section, or my brother sleeps on the other side. I sleep on the floor. Am I going to you guys' room? You know, but mind you, I told you my parents are from the South. And so I did this from a distance, Joe, so she couldn't slap me, right? Far enough away. I was quick enough back then that I could move quick, right? But they realized and saw what the opportunity was. And they took that sacrifice. You know, our parents are always sacrificing for us. And now as a parent of 3 myself, I understand those sacrifices, and they're heartbreaking. Every last one of them are heartbreaking, but we know what's best for our children and our children individually. What did Larry need? And so they made that ultimate sacrifice and allowed me to leave. And it worked. It was what was in my best interest as one of their children. Yeah,
who knows? I mean, if you look, without knowing, but just listening and observing, and of course, you and I have talked a little bit about this in our first coffee too. They did the best they could, right? I mean, they did the absolute best they could to survive, to allow you to survive. They went back because they had no choice. they also ultimately made this decision to allow you to come back here, which was life-changing. Just out of curiosity, did either of them go to college at all?
Neither my brother or sister went to college, but they took their path, and both are doing very well. My sister, the day she turned 18, she left Louisiana and never looked back, and now she's married, happily married since then, 3 kids, successful in her work in Atlanta. My brother, it's funny, the moment he graduated high school, we went and got him because we knew that space was not going to be good for his health. And so we brought him up here back to Kansas. And so he's here now, established family, beautiful family, doing great in his work life, professional life. And ultimately, my mom and dad also ended up back up here in Kansas as well, because they knew, everyone knew that this was what was right. But ultimately, when the finances don't add up and not even robbing Peter to pay Paul is making it happen, you have to make, again, those sacrifices. But my parents always said, we knew that the educational experience you guys were going to get there, even if it was just 3 years, we knew it would benefit you guys long term.
Yeah. I mean, I just I'm not someone that feels like you have to go to college, or I think that the odds of success go up. And by the way, that could be community college, junior college, technical school, whatever it is. But it sounds to me like, with their blessing, with their willingness to always look out for all of you, that you in part were able to start to break a little bit of a cycle, the cycle of poverty and survival that they had to work and grind so hard for every single day just to survive. Look, we all have to work hard every single day, or we should, but that opened up some new doors. And I'm guessing that you're opening up those doors. Paved a path for your brother and your sister as well. It didn't have to be the college route, but to show that this can be done, that this can be successful, and you don't have to live in a 1-bedroom apartment the rest of your life. Yeah,
very true, very true. When you talk about legacy that parents leave, my dad left his legacy on us. He to this day is my hero. And the one that I always looked up to. When they talked about writing about somebody in school, it was my dad, right? And my dad's legacy to us, it's always funny, is he would sit us at the table and with great passion talk to us about the importance of get your education, right? Which he did not do. He did finish high school, but went no further than that. Fell in love with my mom. He found something much more important in the school. Don't drink, while he had a little glass of E&J and some 7-Up. And don't smoke, while he had a cool filter king hanging out his lips, But he knew, Joe, those things. He knew, get your education, don't drink, don't smoke. If I can establish that foundation, you got an opportunity. So it was always great to hear that.
Again, back to the representation, not just, hey, maybe Mr. Larry looks like us, but as those kids start to hear little bits and pieces of the story, depending on how old they are, and they're going to be relatable aspects to this as well. Tell me about Growing Futures, what you guys are doing, and not just, the mission of the organization that you're the executive director of, but your purpose with all of this.
Yes, absolutely. So Growing Futures Early Education, outside of the mission, is a dynamic space. When you think about 0 to 5, people think about daycare, babysitting, and childcare. Childcare is a hot word for us right now. Growing Futures is none of those things. Growing Futures is actually well beyond any of those 3 things, Joel. It is a high quality early educational space, science, data, curriculum driven space that then provides children with that quality experience and preparing them for school. That is the ultimate goal outside of our mission, is to make sure that every child that transitions into the school system at 5 years old is actually ready to be there. And the numbers across the nation are staggering. Only 33% of our children go into the school system ready across the nation. Metro-wide is 66%. But here at Growing Futures, the last 3 years, 91% of our children, 93% of our children, and this year, 91% of our children will go into the system ready to be there. And people may ask, well, what about that other small gap of children? I'm glad you asked that question, Joe. Those children actually go into the school system with all the information for that school, knowing exactly what they need to know, whether it be speech therapy, occupational therapy, dental or vision challenges that child may have. We put the baton right into the school system's hand, that we do not allow there to be any gap of services for those children that do need that support. And so we make sure that they have that. And when we talk about the work we do, we kind of have the 4 pillars that we focus around. And so it's the first is the day-to-day work, where the rubber meets the road in the classroom. Our teachers get to work with our children. We have the cream of the crop of educators in our program. They have minimum early education accreditation all the way through master degrees, Joel. So these people know exactly what they're doing. And you take that knowledge and then you tie it to curriculum as well. And then you also, in each classroom, are doing individualized lesson plans for each child, meeting each child where they are and getting them the needs met that they have, because your needs are my needs, Joel, and my needs aren't your needs. And so they're individualizing the lesson plan for Joel, for Larry, to make sure that that child's opportunity is fully met. So that's what's happening in the classroom every day. On top of that, we have what we call family educators. These are ones that go into our homes to do home visits. Again, we use a curriculum-based approach. We use parents as teachers to go in there and talk to and teach the parents, educate them, empower them on how to connect with their children, how to help them in the home, educate them. And the beautiful part about parents as teachers is that curriculum understands that the parents that we work with are the parents that need us the most and don't have $200 to go to Toys R Us and buy toys. They're taking everyday items in the home and saying, these are how you can work with your child to continue their development. So you get that bag of Oreos, because they can't afford Cheerios, or they get the bag of Oreos, put them on the table next to the bowl, and you and your child are going to pick one up, you're going to put it in the bowl. You're going to pick one up, put it in the bowl. Now you're working on fine motor skills. You're working on counting. You're doing all of those things in that very moment. And the most important thing that's happening is the ability for them to bond. So now they're bonding, their fine motor skills are working, numbers are happening, sequence is happening, all that's happening in that moment. The third thing is our family advocates. Our advocates build partnerships across the community to bring back all the resources that our families might need access to. Rent assistance, diaper assistance, utility assistance, whatever that assistance is, that team works to build those relationships that then give our parents a direct path to that. Removing those barriers out of their way are so very important as a family that needs it the most to make sure that they can be successful in supporting their children. And last but not least, we do wraparound services. So every year, each child gets vision screenings twice a year, dental screenings, hearing screenings. They have play therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. All those things are happening, and they're happening right here on site at Growing Futures. We're not telling you at the end of a long night that you have to go across the town to 7 o'clock for speech therapy. We're telling you, hey, here's what happens today in speech therapy, and here's what you can do in the home to further support that. It's a dynamic setup, and it's much more than just childcare. As you can see in its essence, it's an impactful opportunity, not just for the child, but the whole family. That is our goal: educate, empower, and make sure that those children are ready to go into the school system.
One more question before I get to my baseball themed questions. And I also want to encourage everybody to check out the website. It'll be in our show notes, growingfutureseec.org. The EEC is Early Education Center, growingfutureseec.org. Coming up on 60 years of being in existence, well before your time, even before my time. But I'm just curious. I mean, and that'll be a great opportunity, I'm sure, 2025 to really be able to get a lot of even more attention, celebrations, anniversary, all of that. How, from just your understanding of the history of this organization, how are things different today? I mean, things are different today, I would think, I know, even before, say, 2020 because of the pandemic. A lot has happened in the world over the decades. Sometimes it feels like things are still the same. How is this different today than back when it started?
Yeah. Well, we will be 60 years next year, 2025. And we looked at what eggs cost 60 years ago when it was 25 cents a dozen, and what eggs cost today, $5 to $7 in eggs. So that alone, inflation, the cost of everything has completely changed. But in that same time frame, the funding supports for this work in early education as a head start has not changed in 40 years. And so we have to make up the gap, because the goal is to still provide a high quality experience like we just talked about. And so now we have to fill that gap just to assure that we're able to provide a high quality experience for our children and families that we're serving. And so, Joe, that is a big change in the last 60 years. And in that time, we've really focused on recruitment and retention, specifically for retention of our team. And so we want to make sure that we're providing a high quality cultural experience for them, that the culture of the space works well for them. And so those are some of the big changes. And so now we have to, make sure that we have all of our development team in place, fundraising efforts, and all of those opportunities that allow us to bridge that gap, that very significant gap that has been caused by the cost of living.
Yeah, and it'll continue to change, of course, and just incredible things that you guys are doing. I'll wrap all that up in my final 4 questions, but let's talk about my baseball themed questions for you within your professional career here. What's the biggest home run that you've hit?
Landing as the executive director of Growing Futures. This has become my ultimate purpose. When you talk about someone becoming centered in their world professionally, Growing Futures gave me absolute centering. It lets me be and focus around the children and families that need us the most, like my entire career has been a part of in youth development. But most importantly, Joe, it's in the community that did it for me. It's in the community that did it for me. And so now I get the ultimate opportunity to give back to the community that gave so much to me as a kid.
That's what it's all about. How about, and that's the ultimate home run and the home run that keeps on giving, really. How about a swing and a miss along the way, and what did you learn from it?
Wow. So I worked Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Kansas City, excellent organization, doing excellent things in our community. And our fearless leader at the time, he was Mufasa and I was Simba. And so I was always singing the song, I Can't Wait to Be King. And that caught up with me because I sped up the process. I couldn't wait. And so I had to have my throne. And I took an opportunity that didn't end up being the right opportunity for me, and very quickly learned the experience. And what I learned from that was patience. Yeah. Patience is very important. Joe, you'll also learn that on the pickleball court. Patience is very important.
Yes.
But yeah, that was it. Big swing and a miss, man.
I'll have some swings and misses on the pickleball court. For anybody that's wondering what we're talking about, well, that's going to be in my final 4 questions. He's the expert here, and I've made a promise to jump in once the baseball off season hits. I love the swing and miss lesson though here, because and this is true in everything in life, certainly in sports. I can't tell you how many superstar baseball players towards the end of their career where I've said, what would you tell your younger self? And it's oftentimes a version of slow things down. Now, some of that might be appreciating the moment, not taking it for granted, not stressing about the things that you stressed about back then, understanding that things are going to work out. But I think it goes hand in hand with what you're saying, because at that age, we so often get way too wrapped up into what's next versus what's going on right now. And Absolutely. It's just, I think you have to go through it. I don't know how many people, the ultimate elite athletes, the Kobe Bryants of the world, the Michael Jordans of the world. Right now, Bobby Witt Jr. with the Royals. And I just put him in the same sentence as a Michael Jordan and a Kobe Bryant. He's one of the top 2 or 3 players in all of baseball, but he has this something about being able to be in the moment and not getting ahead of himself at 24, which I just don't think a lot of people have. I mean, that's a gift, I think.
Not at all. Not at all.
Final baseball themed question, small ball. What are the little things that add up to big results for you?
So, I talk to my team and even my children as they're going through their experiences in life, is helping them understand, make sure that you acknowledge the small things that are happening in life, because you'll never get to the big things if you don't allow the small things to collect. And so always being appreciative and paying attention. Take those moments that come your way. Joe, when it's 103 degrees outside and that light breeze comes by, embrace that moment. Take that in. That was given to you in that moment, but we so quickly get beyond it and we don't even realize that moment came for us. And so embracing every small moment that comes, because you'll never be able to appreciate the big ones when they get your way.
I love that. Take a moment to smell the flowers. Take a moment to
Absolutely.
even notice that they're there. How often are we walking
Absolutely.
around in our phones or just distracted? I'm just as guilty as everyone else. I do try walking around Kauffman Stadium or wherever it might be. Just take a moment to not go through the motions, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in it. And then you look back and you forget all of it. So I think that's a lesson that all of us, your team, your kids, any one of us can learn from. All right, let's get to the 4 final questions as we round the bases. Might as well jump right in with the pickleball question, because anyone that knows Larry Lewis Jr. is going to say somewhere within a description, loves pickleball. You are the father of a newborn.
Yes.
And you're still getting up at 4 a.m. to go play pickleball, albeit, God bless your wife, for allowing this.
Yes.
That it's not 7 days a week anymore.
No, it's not.
This is an obsession, right?
It's an absolute obsession. Not just for me, but this full community, by the way. Johnson County was actually voted #1 most obsessed pickleball community this last year. So it's not just Larry, it's across this community. But yes, my wife too is a pickleballer.
Okay.
And so she understands the obsession, which is why I get 2 days. If all things are going well, I take that last feeding, Joe, at the end of the night. And last night, he gave us 6 hours. It was beautiful. I hadn't gotten there yet. So we appreciated that. I looked over at her and she was like, yeah, go ahead.
You didn't even need to ask.
But yes, man, pickleball, that's it. It's my thing. It gave me the ability as an athlete that can no longer play football, that walked onto a basketball court right after COVID, or as COVID was slowing down, and looked at the way these young kids play and was like, that's not basketball. I don't want nothing to do with that. That's going to get me hurt. And I'm getting in that age range. I saw pickleball and I was like, wait a minute. But it fills my cup, man. It allows me to compete. There's strategy, there's thought, there's the ability to contact something. It fills my cup completely, man.
All right. So I am in. I know I'm going to love it. I just haven't. It's not even so much that I haven't had the time. It's been either not finding the right person to connect with and the time during the season as well. So I will begin with you, understanding I won't be able to compete at your level, and I fully envision then getting hooked on it. And then I'm in.
I promise you.
All right. No, I have no doubts. And so I will tell you to hold me accountable to that, but we'll text back and forth and we'll be good on that. I'm actually very much looking forward to that whenever the Royals hopefully playoff run ends with the playoffs. And then whenever that is done, we'll get into that. Okay. Second question. It's a 2-parter.
Okay.
1, give me the scouting report on Larry Lewis Jr., the Kansas State Wildcat. Part 2, what was the impact that Bill Snyder had on your future?
Oh, wow. The scouting report was, I was skilled. I had all the skills, fast enough, quick enough. I had the vision. But you know what happened, Joe? There's a young guy named Darren Sproles that happened to show up at the same time. And we all know where his career ended, right? And so as came into it, that's where my career took a back seat. And I can't be mad, because if it happens to someone, you want it to happen to someone like that. He's an excellent person, great person in the community, great heart, everything about him. And so that's where the scouting report stopped for me. I did end up playing a little arena football locally, and that was a great time too. But that was where it all stopped, when a young man named Darren Sproles came onto the scene and took over all of college football. And as far as Coach Snyder, he I mentioned it earlier, how he's influenced where I am to this very moment. And so when we were playing for him, he said to us, if you're going to be on this team, you're going to give back to this community that's given so much to us. You're going to volunteer somewhere. I walked through the doors of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Manhattan at the time, and I saw the mission on this bright green wall written in black, and it talked about the children that need us the most. And that resonated with me. It made sense, because I was that child that needed it the most. And I walked around with the director and saw all these kids playing with adults in this most productive manner. And I turned to her and said, you mean people get paid to play with kids? It's like, this is the best job ever. I'm never leaving this work. Joe, here we are 25 years later, man.
I'd say that, and I think I probably interviewed Coach Snyder once or twice. I mean, I didn't do a lot with K-State, but around just a little bit. And but you know, you live in this area, you hear story after story after story, whether it be from, you know, students or student athletes that were touched by him and the lives that he has changed and changed for generations. And so I'm not the least bit surprised. I knew you'd have a good story there. For those that don't know, if you're a sports fan, you do. Darren Sproles, the pride of Olathe North High School, K-State, a 3-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, and one of the certainly more entertaining running backs during his time in the NFL. So I think that there's a good reason why maybe you didn't make it to the league because you were stuck behind him. But I'd say
I had my what's next, though. I had my what's next.
You did have your what's next. And so let's go to a what's next in terms of growing futures, because like any important organization, you always can use help. I know that there's some events that are coming up here this summer and then into the fall. Tell us about that as my third question.
Absolutely. So we have our largest fundraiser coming up on October 3rd. It's a Thursday night. We're staying away from Fridays during football season. Friday Night Lights. It's called Harvesting Hope. It's a fantastic event hosted at Strang Hall in downtown Overland Park. It's an excellent experience, very engaging. It's not like a typical gala. It's an ability for people to engage and have some fun. The carnival-style games that are included in this. One of the best dinners you're going to have. There's no rubber chicken at this event, my friend. We have a live band. And one of the things that we feel is very important, Joe, as a community, is that we always expose our local vendors because we are a local product as well. And so we will have the ability for a sip and shop for people prior to the event starting to shop 25 to 30 local vendors, from honey vendors all the way to leather vendors, and just get that exposure for those vendors out there as well. Live great music by Flashdance is a local band again, and then we'll have some local talent be a part of a keynote or a panel opportunity, and we'll have a great MC in Abby Eden who will be joining us that evening, and so we're very excited for that event. And one that might interest you here after the season is, in March, early March, we'll have our PB&J, 3rd annual Pickleball and Jams event hosted at Chicken and Pickle. It's already been put in place. And I look forward to seeing you out there if you're available.
If I am here, I will be there. Hold me to that. And at that point, I'll be an accomplished pickleball player. So
you will be. You got the right teacher. I'm just saying.
No, I'm all in. You can't make my golf game any better than how terrible it is. But pickleball, I know that I can do that. All right, we keep going back to pickleball. That's not a bad thing. Final question, my walk-off. And by the way, again, if you want information on any of this and the organization, Growing Futures, go to growingfutureseec.org. The walk-off question is this. It's a question I love to ask for people that are doing the kind of work that you're doing, especially when you could see the results building and then coming to fruition in the future. When you see those kids graduating high school, going on to college, going on to elementary school, going on to middle school, all of these steps, and doing so successfully most of the time. I mean, nothing's 100%, but the odds have changed for so many of these kids. The cycle is being broken and you're watching it happen right before your eyes. What is that feeling like?
Wow. It's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. You know, while I spend a lot of time in Boys and Girls Clubs working with that age range, I still keep in touch with them. I consider myself providing an opportunity to be a lifelong mentor for them and giving that guidance and that knowledge that I might have around a situation. And when I see them in the community and they see me, they're like, Mr. Larry, I wouldn't have gone to school had it not been for the things that you all were instilling in me and giving to me. And that's priceless to see that you've changed the trajectory of a child's life the way that mine was changed. It completely gave me a different understanding of what life could be, and how dare I not be a part of doing that for the next generation. Just give them the opportunity to see that life could be much more than their current circumstance. That's very important, Joe.
I can't think of a better way to end it. I mean, that's it right there in a nutshell. The incredible work that is being done at Growing Futures. Larry, so glad that you were able to join and that we were able to talk about such an important cause within this community, really an important cause in any community. It all starts with education for these kids and giving them that background, giving them that opportunity, the opportunity that thankfully you ended up having and that you're helping foster for so many others. And now you and your wife with your kids and all of that too. So really appreciative of you doing this on a personal level. So excited to start to get to know you and build that relationship as well. Thanks for joining me on this and appreciate you spending time on Rounding the Bases.
I appreciate it, Joe. Thanks for the opportunity.
Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.